pride of national security. So we were 17 sides at the end of our national security problem. And I will tell you how.
The organization has. So we're talking about how the board behaves, or in some cases, how they misbehave, because that also happens, rather than the tasks they do.
Very rare uranium that I know.
I tell you, I've secured the name and the I say hello to our distinguished professionals, the students, and other publics, and I welcome you all to ICAN on Air broadcast series. A series set to enlighten and equip our knowledge base. Today, we examine the topic, financing industrialization in Nigeria, looking at the opportunities and looking at the challenges. My professional colleagues will attest to the fact that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria has, over the decades, articulated the benefits of industrialization in employment generation, poverty reduction, improved living standard, improved economic growth and development, balance of payment stability, self-reliance, stimulation of other sectors of the economy, and development of the skill sets and manpower of the Nigerian corporate. That seems to look like the credit side. On the seemingly debit side of this articulation are challenges posed by access to finance for industrial development. Joining me, and by implication, all of us, on a question and answer segment of this program to shed brighter insights from the perspective of a tested professional is Dr. Waheed Olagunju. He was the immediate past acting managing director and chief executive officer of the Bank of Industries, BOI. In the course of his almost 35 years banking career, he headed 5 different departments and directorates that included serving as the bank's longest serving company secretary for 16 years. Dr. Olagunju stands out as one of the architects and strong drivers of BOI's outstanding turnaround and transformation between the years 2001 and 2018. We'll be unveiling our esteemed guest to you here very shortly. Also on this program, we share a little bit of snippets of our ICAN diary. Those signature events that has happened in the lives of ICAN within the last 1 week or thereabouts. A few adverts, and of course, announcements. Please stay connected. We will be back with you shortly. Thanks for standing by, and please join me to welcome Dr. Waheed Olagunju to ICAN on Air. Welcome, Dr. Olagunju.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening, Mr. Akifasuke.
Beautiful. You know, Dr. Waheed Olagunju, ever since my economics 102, as we call it back in the universities those days, some of the swan song that you hear, industrialization, 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 and that without industrialization, you could go anywhere. Years later, we say deficit industrialization, tired, worn out industrialization, and it's perhaps one of the reasons why we cannot match with the OECD countries. In framing this subject of financing industrialization, looking at the opportunities and challenges, I like for the benefits of reminders for those who may know, and for those, especially our students who are signing on, to understand the conceptual nature of what industrialization is. Will you, from the practical perspective, help us to understand what is industrialization and what are the indicators for industrialization?
Thank you very much. You hit the nail on the head. It's a brilliant question because it is part of the southern hemisphere. When I say southern hemisphere, south of the countries in Africa, South America, and Asia. Those are the countries in the southern hemisphere, and those in the northern hemisphere, Europe, North America, are described as industrialized countries. That's what makes the difference between the rich and the poor countries, industrialization. And I'm happy that you said practical aspects, but if you look at the dictionaries, you come up with so many definitions of industrialization. But what is clear or common to all definitions is that it's a process by which an economy moves from agrarian or primary production activities into value addition, processing, and manufacturing. That's why at times in economics can be segmented into three primary production activities, the value addition processing activities, secondary. Then you have the tertiary, which is the services, right? Now, the industrialization is what makes the difference, like I said, and I'll give you practical examples. The plight we are in today, economically, is because all efforts are transiting from a primary production economy to an industrialized one have not succeeded as they should have. Prior to independence, and actually in the first 10 years of our independence, agriculture played an important role. Exporting cocoa, exporting palm kernel, exporting primary production without even adding value to them. We made a lot of money, in the process. But you realize that when you add value, for example, cocoa, there was an Oxfam study that was conducted recently, some time ago, whereby it was estimated that cocoa purchased by some European countries from Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Nigeria, and Cameroon was about 900 million US dollars. And they spent about $1 billion adding value to the cocoa they purchased for less than $1 billion. And they were able to turn out trade in manufactured cocoa products, as in chocolates and cocoa drinks, adding value to cocoa to worth about $5 billion US dollars. The 60%, 70 to 60% of the process took place in the industrialized countries. And the primary production countries, primary producing countries, in that particular year, the GDP the per capita income were single digit, depressingly low, maybe under $2,000. But in the industrialized countries, the per capita income in that year was double digit, about $20,000 and above. And if you look at the structure of the economies too, value addition or manufacturing accounted for about 25 to 30% of their GDP. Whereas in the African countries referenced, manufacturing and industrialization accounted for less than 10% of the GDP. So you can see the disparity. So the quality of life, the high living standards in the Northern Hemisphere, where you have per capita income in the region of $25 to $30,000, is accounted for by industrialization. And how do you arrive at the per capita income? It's when you divide, for example, the income earned by a country in a year by the GDP by the population, right? That's how you arrive at the per capita income. So when you have more mouths to feed than you're able to produce, then you're likely to have lower per capita income and lower living standards. But if you have less mouth to feed relative to your GDP, then you have higher per capita income. That's why also too, it's preferred that the positive gap between the population growth rate and the GDP growth rate should be as wide as possible. The GDP growth rate should be higher than the population growth rate. GDP growth rate measures the volume of economic activities in financial terms that takes place over a period of time in an economy, usually measured on an annualized basis. This can be done on a monthly or quarterly basis too, but usually you talk about it on an annualized basis. Then you divide it by the country's population, then you arrive at the GDP. For example, in Nigeria, where you have a country of 200 million, then our GDP prior to the recession, to the depression of 2016, was about 500 billion US dollars, and that brought our GDP per capita income to about 2,800 US dollars. But now, with a population of 200 million and a lower per capita income, lower GDP, we're talking of GDP between 3 to 400 billion US dollars. So with higher population, definitely the per capita income has fallen below $2,000. Whereas if we're able to grow our GDP to a high level, then we have double digits per capita. That's what should be targeted actually. How can we get per capita income of $10,000 and above? That would require multiplying our GDP by 2 times or 3 times. So maybe about 2 trillion or so in a year.
Excellent. Nice expose. And from the Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, from agrarian to being mechanized to give us economic growth, economic development, and industrialization, I want to delve straight into the heart of the matter. As an expert in development banking, please educate our listeners and viewers. Is there a kind of universally accepted or defined approach to financing industrialization of nations?
Well, if you asked me this question perhaps 10 years ago, my response would be different from what it's going to be now. We are now in an increasingly globalized world. So we can't really talk about nations specifically now, because when you are going into industrialization, competitive industrialization for that matter, you should not think about your country alone. In the case of Nigeria, we advise that when you want to set up a manufacturing firm, bear in mind that whatever you do in Nigeria, we don't have monopoly over the production. So if you're not competitive, goods from other countries, more competitive products, more competitive economies, economies with lower production costs, countries with higher efficient infrastructure would always be able to export into Nigeria and sell at a cheaper rate than you, the Nigerian manufacturer. So always think of the global environment, more so with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement in place. Would it surprise you that about 4 to 5 vehicle manufacturing companies have set up shop in Ghana with a population of about 40 million? Their target or destination market is definitely Nigeria, not Ghana, because the demand in Ghana cannot sustain 5 automobile plants. But they were hoping that under the AFCTA, once they're able to produce in Ghana, they can ship to Nigeria. And that will put pressure on Nigerian manufacturers if the Nigerian economy is not that competitive. So that's why it's important that we talk about competitive industrialization. So you can't talk about specific nations now. So you need to look at Africa and then look at the world. Even look at what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. It shows the extent to which the world has become globalized. Anything that happens in any part of the world can affect the entire part of the world, can countries in other parts of the world. So we need to have a global perspective whenever it is we are doing anything in the field of industrialization in view of what the world has become now. I mean, also look at the way we've depended on exporting oil, crude oil, for decades, and it has not come home to haunt us. I mean, that's the best example of how dependence on primary production can be debilitating and can be harmful to the people of the country. Oil prices are going up, crude oil prices are going up, but we are not able to take advantage of rising crude oil prices as we used to do in those days when we were able to add value to our crude oil and export, or even prior to being you're able to add value, and you weren't importing finished petroleum products some years back when our refineries were working. But now we have to import a lot, and you can see what is happening to our economy. We're not able to. That's an area where we have failed, in terms of industrialization, being able to add value to our petroleum products. We have to export crude and import finished products. That I think we can make progress.
Competitiveness is the name of the game. But Dr. Olagunju, I'd like to situate this competitiveness, this financing, industrialization within the context of Nigeria. Are there supposed to be key stakeholders with specific or assigned roles?
Now, that takes me back to the question you asked me, models for financing in industrialization. Finance is only one of the factors of production, as we all know in economics. And according to some accounts, globally today, we have about $17 trillion worth of investable resources looking for where to invest viably and safely. Those are two words we need to watch carefully. They want their money to return, and they want very good returns on their investments. And of course, there's a relationship between risk and reward. But investors are not usually careless, they're not reckless. Safety is usually the key word. That's why even some of these resources I'm talking about are even earning negative interest. They would rather earn negative interest than go and lose the entire capital in unproductive ventures or to areas where the money will not be safe, or where the investments will not be safe. So that was why when Africa's richest man wanted to finance a cement plant in Abajana and Ibese and Co., the Nigerian financial market was not robust enough to support what he wanted to do. So we had to look beyond Nigeria. I believe he approached Renaissance, and I believe he also approached the private sector arm of the World Bank, which is the IFC, International Finance Corporation, and they gladly financed. So talking about sources of finance and industrialization, you have to talk about a combination of domestic and external sources. Although under the Africa Union's Agenda 2063, they're advocating that about 70% of the resources we need for investment in Africa should be domestically generated. That's the objective. But the reality on ground today is that we do not have the quantum of resources we require to transform the African economy, at the pace we require. So we need external support, not only in terms of funding, but also in terms of management, in terms of expertise, in terms of capacity. So that answers the question. It depends on the case by case, what you want to do. When MTN wanted to roll out in Nigeria as well, the promoters didn't have the resources in Nigeria. They also approached the International Finance Corporation. And some of my friends in IFC told me that the MTN deal was the most attractive and most rewarding at that time ever undertaken by the International Finance Corporation, because they saw it as a very risky venture coming into Nigeria, which according to analysts was not a safe area. If you remember, that was why Vodacom did not come into Nigeria, because they suffered from analysis paralysis. You know, they overanalyzed the Nigerian economy. So Nigerians are poor, they will not be able to afford GSM services. And of course, that has become history. You can see how the telecom providers are churning in very huge turnovers and they're making a lot of profit. The Nigerian economy, the Nigerians are paying for those. And if you look at the financing model of the telecom sector, they are usually prepaid, not even postpaid, which means you have to pay before services is rendered. And you can see the subscribers increasing every day, including for data and voice call. So, in fact, Nigeria is an investment heaven for foreign investors. Prior to the recession in 2016, and when the level of insecurity wasn't what it is today, as attested to recently too by the Minister of Industrial and Investment, that indeed the level of insecurity hasn't helped the investment level in Nigeria as well. Prior to 2016, Nigeria accounted for the highest foreign direct inflow into Africa, according to UNCTAD, and the figures are there for everybody to see. And Nigeria has all it takes to be an industrialized country. According to Andrew Young, when I had a chat with him about 20 years ago, he said Nigeria is the only country in the world that has the potentials to replicate the American miracle. It shouldn't take us as long as it took the US to become a developed and industrialized country, because we will not be reinventing the wheel. One, in terms of location, Nigeria is very well located. If you look at the map of Africa, it's like a trigger. If you turn the map of Africa around, Nigeria is located where you have a trigger in a pistol. We are not landlocked. Access to the sea is a huge advantage, which we are not yet taking full advantage of. The population, the huge market, right? And then the resources endowment, agriculture, solid minerals, then petroleum. We have all it takes. So what we need to do is import capital and technology. What we have is what other countries cannot. Why is MTN doing better in Nigeria than in South Africa? Because they are constricted. They don't have the market. They don't have the population. But we have it here. So Nigeria is an investor's delight. And we're in a position to attract huge investments from all over the world, if only we can get our act together. And we can become a developed country within 10 years. Because see how long it took us to move from less than 500,000 telephone lines in 2001 to what we have today. We're talking about millions, right? The success in Nigeria's telecom industry has been described as the most phenomenal in the world. But nobody is singing our praises. Nobody's saying anything about it. But there is nowhere in the world where this kind of progress has been recorded. The ICT sector in Nigeria is more developed and more advanced than some other countries. And that's what the financial sector in Nigeria has leveraged. The banking sector is another area where we've recorded one of the best improvements in the world. The Nigerian banks, the best banks in Nigeria today are doing much, much, much better than most of their Western counterparts. But nobody's singing this praise. But these are areas where Nigeria has done well. And during the recapitalization, a lot of foreign investors invested in Nigerian banks. These are AAA rated Nigerian banks with huge returns on their investment. So sources of financing industrialization are there, domestic and foreign, and we get our act together, that shouldn't be a challenge.
Well, get our acts together, that shouldn't be a challenge. And looking at potential and the actuality of underperformance. While you are mentioning the ICT, you are mentioning the other sectors that went other than oil, we should also not forget about our Nollywood. you know, about our fashion industry. And so that takes me to area of policy framework. I know that we have heard of the Nigeria Industrial Revolution Plan, NIRP for sure, and the Nigeria Industrial Policy. Were they not designed to take care of some of the things that you have just mentioned? What has been their journey to date? Or in other words, could you help in assigning marks between 0 to 10 on the scorecard of these policy directives? Are they in sync or they are out of sync with Nigeria's National Development Plan that's supposed to end in 2025?
In Nigeria, we've now been short of development plans or policies right from independence. Incidentally, I studied all the development plans from independence to date. And our leaders at independence, they realized that for Nigeria to transit from a primary production country to an industrialized country, they needed funding. That was why Sir Festus Okotie-Eboh, as the finance minister at that time, approached the World Bank that Nigeria needed a long-time financing institution. And that was what led to the establishment of the Nigerian Industrial Development Bank, the precursor institution of the Bank of Industry in 1964. And the World Bank, the private sector arm of the World Bank, the International Finance Corporation, accounted for about 24% of the equity investment, while the central bank had about 25% or so. So both of them, right, teamed up with the private investors in ICAN Investment Company Limited. ICAN was incorporated in 1959 by some Nigerian and British investors who were supporting the real sector of the Nigerian economy. So that was a ready vehicle that the federal government and the World Bank bought into. And the IFC actually appointed the first managing director, Dr. James Raj, of the Nigerian Industrial Development Plan. And incidentally, one of the best accountants Nigeria ever produced, the late Mr. Olagunju, who is also a past president, was a pioneer staff of NIDB in 1964. And many other accountants worked in the Nigerian Industrial Development Bank. So, and they were able to come up with a world-class institution that was able to mobilize about $550 million in terms of lines of credit from the World Bank, about 4 lines of credit from the World Bank, and about 4 lines of credit from the European Investment Bank, and I think 1 from the African Development Bank. So that was part of the first National Development Plan, setting up NIDB, and in some.
Yes, I think a bit of a glitch there. I'm very sure that Dr. Waheed Olagunju will join us very soon. And because he was looking at the history of the fact that we accountants have been pillars of what engineers will call strength of materials when it comes to industrialization. I'm sure he's going to come back soon.
From the international financial system. Yes, I was explaining before the break in transmission that the efforts at raising funds internationally have always been part of Nigeria's national development plans. And the Bank of Industry has built on the successes of NIDB. This is about a 63-year-old institution. And when BOI was approaching the international financial market in 2017, the fact that NIDB was able to service those lines of credit successfully helped the Afro-Exim-led initiative at that time. That process was led by the current managing director of the Bank of Industry, Mr. Luka Edekpito, who went to Cairo to meet with the Afro-Exim, and they're able to raise about $750 billion from the international finance. But between then and now, they've been able to raise about $4 billion from the international financial system to support Nigeria's industrialization process. Of course, with the support of the central bank, a part owner of the Bank of Industry, that guaranteed the facilities, and also went to a currency swap agreement with BOI. Because learning from NIDB's challenge, the lines raised from those multilateral institutions were unlent to industrialists in Nigeria who were exposed to the foreign exchange risk. So when SAP came in 1986, and with this series of devaluations of the Naira, the beneficiaries of those loans, because of the elasticity of demand for the goods and services they were producing, could not increase their prices to be able to come up with more Naira that was required to exchange for the foreign currencies at the time. So to hedge against the fluctuation, the central bank guaranteed the facility and also has a swapping arrangement, currency swapping arrangement with the Bank of Industry. And the federal government too also guaranteed the last facility that was obtained from the international financial system. So the Bank of Industry represents a very good, successful machinery for raising money for a country's industrialization. And the bank's customers have done extremely well, because that's why the bank has a AAA rating. That means the quality of risk assets, more than 95% of risk assets are performing, and its NPL ratio are below the 5% threshold set by the central bank. And it's one of the conditions in the agreement between the Bank of Industry and the foreign lenders, that the NPL ratio will not exceed 5%. And AAA rating, that's as good as they could come. That's what the African Development Bank also has. So the Bank of Industry has done extremely well the last 63 years as a vehicle for mobilizing resources domestically and internationally for financing Nigeria's industrialization. And I was opportuned to have worked in that bank for 29 years. And I was part of the process.
Fantastic, Dr. Olagunju. I ordinarily, I still want to put you under the bus because I was asking for a scorecard between 0 and 10. I know we accountants, we know how to ask questions from bottom up and all that. And from the scorecard of what you have just put in NIDB and what BOI is doing, I think it's catch going on. So between 0 and 10%, when you want to look at this NIPR, I'm talking about the Nigeria Industrial Revolution Plan, the policy, whether they are in sync with National Development Plan, that's 2025. What scorecard will you give? 0, 1?
Look,
2?
In terms of policies and programs, I'll give us 100%. We've had excellent documents from National Development Plan to date. And the components of these development plans include the NIRP you mentioned. And not only NIRP, there was also NEDEP, the National Enterprise Development Program, that was supposed to take care of micro, small, and medium enterprises. The NIRP looked after, they catered for the large enterprises mainly, but there was connection between the two of them. And the Nigeria National Development Plan 2, that you're talking about, 2021 to 2025, I believe is one of the best development plans that ever been produced by Nigeria. Because for the first time,
I agree with you on paper.
Yes, but
what about implementation?
That was where I was coming to.
Okay.
And I cited an example of an institution. I answered the question indirectly.
Okay.
NIDB was a product of Nigeria's National Development Plan. But because NIDB was lucky, I wouldn't use the word lucky, but the process was deliberate. And certainly, I answered in terms of governance structure that was put in place in NI. Because implementation is where we have the problem. If you don't implement well, you're going to have challenges. But where you implement well, you have successes. And NIDB, BOI, is one of the best success stories because in terms of implementation, all the governments in Nigeria from 1964 to date have supported that institution through divine guidance. Because a colleague of mine, who is also a fellow chartered accountant, Simon Aradono, says Bank of Industry is God's own bank, which is true. Because for an institution to have survived all the governments, and what we know happens to state-owned enterprises, particularly in Africa, with political interventions here and there, for that institution to have succeeded for 63 years and remains a shining example can only be by the grace of God. So, and I said in terms of governance, The first chief executive was a Pakistani from the World Bank who ran the bank from 64 to 66. Under the agreement, he was supposed to groom a Nigerian to succeed him. Chief Silas Daniel succeeded him, 66 to 76. The World Bank was on the board of NIDB till 76, when the federal government bought out the IFC under the Industrialization Decree, whatever. And they had a technical advisor too, who sat at NIDB with the management. But when Silas Daniel left, Mr. Osha was brought in. He was MD for 4 years. Alhaji Abubakar Abdulkadir was brought in. He was MD for 9 years. Malam Ibrahim Ali succeeded Alhaji Abubakar Abdulkadir. Then Alhaji Sudi Kasumu succeeded Malam Ibrahim Ali. Alhaji Kasumu was the last managing director of NIDB. But by the time he stepped down in 2001, go and look at the figures. KPMG was auditing NIDB's accounts. The bank remained profitable up till 2001, in spite of some of the high NPLs. Now, the bank had huge investments in equity. I was making a lot of money. And they also had a huge investment in real estate. I was making a lot of. So they were able to absorb those NPLs from the credits that are induced by the environment, not because the bank did not do well. Now, the NBI took off 2001. Between 2001 and 2004, Dr. Safiana led the bank, and he was able to clean the books. The books were cleanable because the loans, the quality of the bad loans that were inherited were high. They were all secured. So the loan workout agreements that were put in place by the pioneer management team of BOI succeeded because of the good homework that the managers of BOI had done on the risk assets. And the properties. Recently, BOI commissioned the second towers in Abuja. The land on where those 2 towers were built were owned by NIDB. And NIDB owned prime properties across the country. Right? So that was
you know what I'm going to say? You know what I'm going to say? When the upstream gets a good handshake with the downstream, policies with the kind of determination and discipline that we had from the likes of our first African chartered accountant, Mr. Olakure, we are not surprised. I want to give us a bit of a breather now. If you are just joining, this is ICAN on Air, and we've been guesting Dr. Waheed Olagunju. We've been looking at the subject, financing industrialization in Nigeria, the opportunities and the challenges. We'll go on a short break now, and when we come back, make sure you set with some of your questions, which we are beginning to see. We're going to fire them at Dr. Waheed Olagunju. Make sure you stay and come back with us on this very interesting journey on industrialization. We'll be back shortly.
Glory of God and for the use of mankind. So, this for the Father, Son, Amen. Just pull it down. Pull it down.
So the ICAN BOI Vision Hub, commission on May 24th, 2022, with my humble self, during the presidency of this conference, we do the ICAN FC, 57 president of ICAN. Thank you all for honoring our invitation, because it's our invitation with ICAN and BOI. Today, to witness the commissioning of the ICAN BOI Technology Hub. This is one project that the Bank of Industry is particularly proud of, given the increasing importance of technology to development and youth empowerment. Technology plays an increasingly dominant role in many professions today by transforming the way businesses operate, resulting in improved efficiency, cost savings, and simplified processes. Accountancy is one of such professions. And in recognition of this, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria and the Bank of Industry have collaborated to birth the ICAN BOI Tech Hub.
Indeed, Dr. Waheed Olagunju, it has to be the hands of God. earlier today at that ICAN BOI Innovation Hub, we actually saw the hand of God that goes into the future. That was a beautiful one. And your successor, Mr. Lokayode Piton, did a great, humongous job commissioning that. I'd like to quickly ask you, do you think there's a nexus between Nigeria's national development plans, the one that has favored BOI, well, maybe others are not as lucky because they are not as disciplined? Is there a nexus between the Nigeria's national development plan, the AFDB's high fives, the AU Agenda 2063, facilitating the sustainable development goals? Is there a nexus? Just briefly.
Thank you for that question. I'm sorry, I might not be able to make it as brief as you want. But you see what I was saying? It's not propaganda. When I was talking about, Nigeria will not be where it is today if just 50% of the state-owned enterprises are as well managed as the Bank of Industry has been well managed in the last 63 years. I mean, it's not only financial institutions that are rated, corporate entities are also rated. How many state-owned enterprises in Nigeria can submit themselves for rating? If you have AAA rated financial institutions, what that speaks to is the quality of governance, the quality of leadership. To be rated, a lot of indices going to be rated as an institution and as a country as well. So we are saying that let's turn Nigeria into an enterprise. Let's run Nigeria the way we run a world-class institution. And like I was saying, in 10 years' time, our GDP, our per capita income can become double digits in 10 years' time. We did it in cement, we did it in telecom, we did it in banking. But that was because the government came up with good policies. Goes back to answer your question. Aliko could do what he did because of the cement policy that was launched at maybe 2001, 2002, when Chief Kola Jamodu was Minister for Industry, a former president of MAN, who is also a chartered accountant as well, before Chief Executive of PZ. Incidentally, he was the Minister of Industry when BOI was birthed, when BOI was launched. So if you have good governance in all ministries, in all state-owned enterprises, we will not be where we are today, because we can see what's happening. Emirates, for example, is an airline owned by the government of Dubai. We see how state-owned enterprises are working in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore. So let us improve the quality of governance and money will flow into Nigeria. Now, back to those plans you talked about. Like I said, the current development plan we have, incidentally, I was part of that process because I headed the team that worked on financial and specialized financial institutions, right? And we made a lot of input. And also another thing, like I was saying, that's why I described one of the best plans Nigeria ever had because it was participatory. The private sector, the government, and international development partners came in to form this program. And I have to know from vintage position that Dr. Sarah Alade, the special advisor of the president on finance and economy, headed the mainframe committee that worked on these on this document. You can look at her vast experience from the Central Bank, where she was assistant director, deputy director. She rose through the ranks to become deputy governor for 10 years, and also acted as governor. So when you have such a person leading the team, then the minister of finance was chairman. Then our third person was co-chairman from the private sector. They couldn't have come up with a shorty job. Brilliant document, but implementation is not the issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the Bolsonaro regime also came up with the telecoms policy. They deregulated the telecom sector. That's why the expansion was recorded. Now that succeeded too because we have Anderson Dukwe as head of the NCC. If we didn't have Anderson Dukwe in NCC to implement that program, it would have succeeded. So, and that's somebody who is not well celebrated in Nigeria. For 10 years, he headed NCC. And that was when all these things happened. That's a sector that succeeded. Yeah, it's true. Look at banking too. The Bolsonaro regime came up with the recapitalization. Governor Soludo did an excellent job. FSS 2020, that was when the rating of Nigerian banks started. He knew that for us to recapitalization to succeed, you need to be rated. And when the Nexus and GTBs or those GTBs and UBA and all of them became, and Tony Melu and all of them got their banks rated, they were able to raise money. Zenith Bank, and those banks are doing extremely well.
Super. So
I
think, yes, I think the
Lamido succeeded Soludo. He did a brilliant job. And you can see what government
the underlining point is to have vision, is to be determined, to put square pegs in square holes.
Yes.
From the examples that you rated. And I hope, as we are speaking, Mr. Ernest Indikwe, who is a personal friend and also a friend to the Institute of Chartered Accountants, is listening and is hearing this. And sooner than later, to get to a lot of the things that we are talking about here. So governance is the issue. Unfortunately,
sorry to interrupt you. Even look at NAFDAC too. See what Dora Quinley did in NAFDAC. And see what the president of NAFDAC is doing. So
we can go on and on.
If in FIRS. I can also
if you yes,
yes,
I can tell you some of the policy communique that this institute, because I was there, put across to government that we, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, we are not just noisemakers, we are doers. And if you give us the implements, will deliver the devil, which is exactly what you are saying here. Now, because time is not our friend, a couple of things I wanted to ask you. Some questions came on board when Dr. Hussein was asking the questions surrounding that the financial institutions in this country go for short-term credit, and how do we breach that? Okay, yes, Nigeria's financial institutions driven by short-term returns rather than long-term. Critical challenge to industry. How can we address them? I think again that is part of the things that industrialization and governance will cope. And so Saulu also came up and was talking about leadership, which is the main plank of what you have been talking about now. Let's go back to leadership. Let's go back to some seriousness. Let's come to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, not because I am a fellow of that institute, but because I have been tested, dusted, and I know is the way forward. Let's listen to when I can speak to policy, and let's take them. The idea should not be to divide and decimate the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. I believe also that our lawmakers at the National Assemblies and all the state assemblies are also listening. This is the clearing call to get into the right fit, into the right place. I will have to kind of close. And before I close, I'm going to have to extract a commitment from you. Quite a number of questions I wish to ask you, but time is not permitting me. That I'm going to call you at not too distant a time, and you are going to come back. I will close by asking you this direct question. Hopefully, you will be able to give me a direct answer. I'm talking about financing industrialization in Nigeria. Are we on the right path? Yes or no?
Yes, go by what the Bank of Industry is doing. If we take a lead from there, BOI can do what IDC did in South Africa. BOI can do what BNDS did in Brazil.
Okay, so
continue to support the yes, of course, yes. But you must do it the right way. And
yes, if you put the professionals to man and do what needs to be done in terms of governance, I think I agree with you. It's not
only
lost.
professionals, people with integrity, people with character.
And
very, very important. Integrity and character.
I tell you, I agree with you. People like the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria that has been rebranded into the same chapter.
And that's why if
new chapters, same chapter, old chapters, we still have what it takes. So let me have your final word on this subject as we close.
Well, you see, I must commend the current leadership of ICAN and previous ones too. The 57th president, Mrs. Comfort Olu Eitayo, let me give all our titles too. MNI, CFA, and FCA has done a wonderful job in the last 1 year. And that's why the Bank of Industry is able to lend its brand to support what ICAN is doing under her leadership. And the Innovation Center that was commissioned coincidentally today speaks a lot of volumes. Because we're in the fourth industrial revolution. And with the increasing level of digitalization, we need a lot of interventions in these areas. So it's a wonderful initiative that ICAN did what it did. And I must commend you too, ICAN on Air. Because in my almost 40-year journey, starting as a journalist and a development banker, information has always been in short supply and it's been identified as a weakness when it comes to development or implementation, right? So we need a lot of information. We need a lot of communication. We need to evolve into a communication-driven society. And that's one of the reasons why we are still where we are today. Not many people are informed. It's in the holy books. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Look at the opportunities that are bound in Nigeria, for goodness sake. How many Nigerians are aware of these opportunities? How many of them are taking advantage? In fact, foreigners are better enlightened about the Nigerian economy and they're taking advantage. More foreigners are making money from Nigeria than Nigerians are. So we need to continue to enlighten. I'm speaking from position of authority because I having worked in BOI Strokan IDB for almost 3 decades. If not because we took deliberate policies to support Nigerian entrepreneurs with potentially viable proposals, and we also support them not only financially, but in terms of technical support. With the resources we have would have been taken up by foreigners. It won't even be enough because they have the expertise, they have everything. So we need to build the capacity of Nigerians. And information is very, very important to building the capacity of Nigerians in terms of knowing what to do, how to do it. And ICAN continue to play a lot of role because numbers are important in any investment process. That's why the bank group, we only work with information supplied by our customers from credible and reputed financial institutions and financial firms, and we take that into consideration. And the bank has a lot of ICAN fellows who have done extremely well, a lot of accountants have worked through BOI and they are still there and they are doing ICAN proud and they're doing extremely well. So continue to do what you are doing in terms of numbers, in terms of education, and I also commend you too, Mr. Watuke. I followed this program, I watched it, and in view of my antecedents, I can rate you. Yes, that you've done a good job. Please keep the flag flying. You've done well as a host, the anchor of this program. So I can commend you. Because the first 9 years of my career was in broadcasting, and I anchored a lot of programs, and I know what it takes. And when I joined banking, I started with corporate communications. So I know the importance of communication to banking. Then I moved into corporate planning, to secretariat, into SME, to heading the bank, and a lot of things. So well done, ICAN.
I am carrying that flag and I'm taking it back to my editorial team who work behind the scene to make this happen 2 times a week. And I'd like to thank our online participants. Sorry, we're not able to take a number of your questions, but
I'm sure you'll come back if you ask me.
Thank you very much. And so next on our ICAN on Air, it's on Thursday, May 26, 2022. Time will still be 6 p.m. West African time. And please come on all our ICAN online platforms, the YouTube, the Facebook. Get to like them and you'll be prompted. The topic we are going to be looking at is, wait for this, professional accountants in the political space. Yes, you heard me right. Professional accountants in the political space. And guesting will be Olalere Babashola, MSc, FCA, who had a sterling career, including becoming the Executive General Manager, Government Relations for the whole upstream subsidiary of Total Energies in Nigeria. Managed all relationships with various arms of government before opting for an early retirement after a whooping 29 years of robust experience in upstream energy sector. Presently, he's a member of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee of ICAN. You don't want to miss this. Let me leave you with my nuggets for today. And I quote, "Today, I think I feel fulfilled in supporting ICAN BOI Tech Hub. It is perhaps my modest way of payback to ICAN for not being a member today, a journey I started with and I still look at as one of those things I would still very much love to be in. I am proud of ICAN and the values their members continue to provide to the growth of BOI." End of quote. That is attributable to Mr. Olukayode Piton, the current MD, CEO of Bank of Industry. As I always posit, be the change you like to see. And so the sun sets on an ICAN on Air program for today to arise again, as mentioned, on Thursday, May 26, 2022. And until then, I remain Akin Fatunke, your uncle, ICAN on Air. Bye for now.